they both pushed on. Finally, Margie's concert came, and she was great. She stood out when her solo came because she sang with fire and force, whereas the other girls and boys that night were like little cautious robots. The extra rehearsals had given Margie the leverage of ownership. Next up was Stephanie's talent show, and things still weren't right with her song. Her rehearsals still weren't taking it anywhere. So, I got an idea. I went to the video store and rented the video documentary of Janis Joplin's life. It contained a concert performance that I'd been lucky enough to be present at personally. Her performance at Monterey Pop Festival with her band, Big Brother and the Holding Company. At the time of the concert, I was stationed at the Presidio of Monterey in the U.S. Army. I was there that late afternoon, sitting by myself in a fourth-row seat, when Janis blew a hole in the music world with her performance of Ball and Chain. The moment was also captured in the film Monterey Pop, as Mama Cass Elliot is seen in the same audience in a reaction shot to Janis Joplin, her mouth gaping in awe. Janis Joplin was on fire that day. I never saw anything like it. None of today's feisty, angry female rockers quite have the exact spirit, because Janis wasn't as angry as she was, well, on fire. I put the videotape in for Stephanie and Margie to watch, and I'd queued it up to the performance of Ball and Chain. We watched together, and as usual, I got goosebumps and tears in my eyes when I watched it. I got that same feeling I always get when I see the human spirit. I got it when I saw the early young Elvis. I used to get it watching a lyrically insane football player named Chuck Cecil play football. I've gotten it watching Michael Jordan play basketball with the flu and still outplay the whole court. Or watching Alvin Lee in 10 Years After at Woodstock. I've gotten it watching Pavarotti sing Nessun Dorma and almost explode with joy in the volume of the song. I've gotten it watching Marlon Brando in One-Eyed Jacks, Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men. I've gotten it hearing Buffy St. Marie sing God is Alive, Magic is Afoot from Leonard Cohen's Beautiful Losers. When you're in the presence of the Spirit, you know the feeling. Owners of the Spirit are beautiful losers. They risk all. They're losers because they have lost all fear of embarrassment. They've lost all inhibition. They've lost all concern for what other people might think. Stephanie's eyes grew a little wider as Janis Joplin sang on. The passion and abandon and power in that one small woman was something that only a corpse would be unmoved by. When the song was over, the video showed Mama Cass mouthing the word wow, just as Stephanie was saying wow. While I was putting the tape away, I told Stephanie, there are times in life when you know you have a chance to really go for it. You're a great singer, so I know you're going to sing your song very well in the show. You have to decide for yourself how much you're going to go for it. You're never who you think you are. You can be anyone you want. When you're singing, you might remember Janis Joplin. The night of the talent show was fun and lighthearted. I had all but forgotten about my Janis Joplin lecture with Stephanie. I was just there to enjoy the show, see her sing. After a few acts, in which the performers showed varying degrees of talent, self-consciousness, it was Stephanie's turn. She had a CD of the background music and background vocals to the song Hero, and she stepped out on stage in a black dress and began the song as her friends in the audience in the gym cheered and clapped to encourage her. Her voice was a little weak, nervous at the start, although right on pitch. She softly sang through the first verse, looking out at the crowd, occasionally smiling with self-consciousness. As her song continued to build, I saw something start to change in Stephanie. She stomped her high-heeled shoe forward as the song took the turn into the last verse, and she was no longer smiling. Her voice grew louder and louder. You could tell that the audience no longer existed for her. It was just the song. I began to get tears in my eyes. I could feel my heart race, my throat tighten. I remember thinking, she's going for it. She's going for it. Stephanie rounded the corner into the last chorus in full possession of the song, sending it through her spirit out into the auditorium in a way I'd never heard her sing before. The kids in the audience jumped to their feet, raised their hands, started screaming, but Stephanie's voice soared beyond them all, above it all, living only for herself, as the song came to an end, among the loudest, sustained cheering of the evening. Even grown-ups were on their feet at the end, knowing they'd seen a moment they themselves might not have lived in a long time, a moment of the human spirit on fire. I turned to my friends and family and said, wow, I was inspired. I'd shown Stephanie Janis Joplin, and then Stephanie showed me Stephanie. The trick is to pass it on. Oliver Wendell Holmes observed, most people go to their graves with their music still in them. He was right, most people do. But that's because they've never heard that music. They simply don't know it's there. There was nothing in the circumstance itself that caused Stephanie to find her spirit. The whole point of watching the Janis Joplin video was to show her that it can be created. You can tap into the spirit in yourself anytime you want. It's always there. Stephanie doesn't have anything you don't have. Janis Joplin didn't have anything that Stephanie didn't have. The next time you see the spirit in someone else, don't just admire it. Think of how to do your own version of it. Don't envy it, duplicate it. Stephanie saw herself in Janis. You will see yourself in Stephanie. Someday I'll see myself in you. The trick is to pass it on. Spirit is a low flame inside us, just waiting for the pump to bring the oxygen in. Outside circumstances don't activate the pump, we do. We can pump it anytime we want. That's why taking a deep breath always improves any circumstance we're in. It dilutes fear, it focuses the mind, it relaxes the body, it expands thinking, so it feeds the spirit. The word inspire literally means to breathe in. But if we never do this, the spirit will suffocate inside a finished, stagnant personality. It can't breathe inside a sealed-off notion of who we are and always will be. That's probably why Dr. Nathaniel Branden warns parents to be careful what they say to their children, because the children will probably believe it. Parents are gods to children. They're the ultimate power and authority. If your parents say you're lazy, it's not just an opinion. That's who you are. We can stay stuck inside a childhood self-concept, but we don't have to. It was just an invention to begin with. If we were to fully understand how the mind operates, permanent pessimistic personalities would become a thing of the past. We'd be like children on a Christmas morning, opening the gift of a brand new possibility, a brand new self. People change. People become happy. Happiness becomes a thing to be mastered. An immediate member of my family suffered from multiple personality disorder, although to say she suffered from it is like saying Georgia O'Keeffe suffered from her paintings, or that Michelangelo suffered from the Sistine Chapel. She was brutally abused when she was a little girl, sexually and physically. The history of her abuse, when it was finally revealed, was almost too much for me to hear. Then I saw pictures. I saw it was even worse than I'd heard. As with most people who have multiple personality disorder, she'd been misdiagnosed for most of her life. It wasn't until she was in her 30s that the truth came out. The personalities she'd invented to cope with the abuse as a child were the most astonishing human creations I'd ever seen. My heart jumped, my skin jumped, as different voices, different faces, different people came from the same body in front of me. When she was hospitalized and diagnosed, it was found that each personality that came forward had different brain waves. Some had scars, some didn't. Some personalities had voices that were different. Some were the voices of children. And as I listened to her, I was stunned to hear that these voices didn't sound like those of a grown woman imitating a child. They sounded like actual children's voices. The human brain will astonish you when backed into a corner. As a biocomputer, it's bordering on the magical. After our family went through the upsetting crisis of reacting to her early diagnosis and the various attempts at treatment, I began losing my fear of what was happening and started feeling a deep sense of awe at what the human mind could create in an emergency.